We just picked up this mower, and it definitely needs some work. It's pretty rough, and it's missing a lot of parts. But let's get it unloaded and see actually what we're gonna need. So on our tour here, we're definitely missing a key, so we'll need an ignition. The seat's a little crunchy, but it's there. We don't know if the rear axle works. Alright, let's take a look at the blades. Well, it does have blades, so that's a good start. They obviously need to be cleaned up a bit, but the deck seems to be in decent shape. No holes or anything, so that's a good sign. The two tires that are on it both hold air, so that's a bonus. Alright, so right off the bat, I mean, we're missing the hood and a set of wheels. It should have an engine shroud here, which we currently don't have. The engine turns over, and it has a little bit of compression. It could just be from rings being dry, but this here is the intake, and you can see that's not doing what it should be. Since our ignition key is missing, I was digging around in the parts bin and found one that should work. I'm not sure if it's good or not, but let's plug it in and give it a test. And then this is missing a battery, so we just have it hooked up to the jumper box, but let's give it a try. And the donor ignition key is good, so one off the list, and a bunch more to go. Our intake tube is broken, but I did find a spare also in the parts bin, and I believe that's close enough that should work. So let's disconnect here and here and fit it up. We're just using a 10 millimeter. Alright, so that one's pretty crusty. Put in this one. Take these two screws off. It's 8 millimeter. So pop those. We're just going to put it back in. And there should be a spring that goes from the governor here to your top throttle plate, which we are missing. So back to the parts bin, and we'll see if we can find one of those. Alright, I did find a governor spring floating around off of one of the blow-in motors, so hook this side in. And that little loop goes in there. This side goes in there. It slid in through that crack there. Except for these carburetor studs go into plastic, whereas this old one is not. So that uses a machine screw. So we'll go try to pull some parts off of that. Alright, so we found some machine screws, and those will fit just fine. You should be replacing your gaskets and doing all that while you're at it, but we don't know if this engine runs, if it knocks, so we're just gonna assemble it, check and see what's wrong, and then we'll take it apart and do it right then. Jeez, that was on there tight. Oh, that smells ripe. That is some bad gas. I think this guy's locked up anyways. It should be able to move some. So we'll try to find a new carb solenoid now. Alright, so our old solenoid should move freely, and you can see it's definitely not. So this is a donor. You can see it bounces around and moves freely. So then when you turn the key to the on position, if you watch that plunger, it'll suck down. And that lets fuel go into the carb then. So we'll put this one in. Alright, I think we're going to actually dump some starter fluid in there and just see if it'll pop off. Alright, here it goes. Alright, so it doesn't want to start. So what we're doing, we'll hook up the pressure gauge here, and we'll see what kind of pressure we're getting out of it. It's leaking down, and we only got to about 45 or so. And these really, anything above 90 is good. But so we have a problem with compression. So we'll take off the valve cover, see if we have something wrong with one of the valves. If you can't find anything there, then we'll take the head off and go from there. We checked the valves. Everything looks good on this end. Didn't see any metal chunks or anything. So we're still not getting good compression. So we're gonna pop off the head here and see if maybe we have a cracked valve or just a blown gasket or something. So if you look at our cylinder head here, it looks fine. It's a little dirty, but it looks like this engine has been cleaned up once before. And you can tell right here that the head gasket is cracked there. So that would leave me to believe that that is the reason that we're getting low compression. So we'll swap out the head gasket and put it all back together and see where we're at. Alright, so we have our new gaskets finally in, and we already had cleaned off the face here and the bottom of the head as well, cleaned off the valves. So now we can re-put in our pins here. And we already have the head cleaned up. And just line that up on those pins. Alright, so now that we have them all, for the most part, in, this is our bolt pattern. So we're going to start at the bottom, center, top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you want to do it in sequence up to 18 foot-pounds. Alright, so for our first round, we have our torque wrench set at 10 foot-pounds. And we'll just follow the sequence. 8. And then we'll tighten back down to 18 foot-pounds. And go over it all again. Now that we have that done, now we'll gap our rockers. Alright, we're going to start by loosening up the jam nut in here, and that's what are we using? T20 Torx. I'll just back that off slightly. Back that off. We're ready to set the valve lash. So we have to bring our engine back up to top dead center. So we're just sliding a screwdriver or socket or something in there. You can see it's going down. Now it's coming up. Alright, that should be top dead center then. Just going to spin it over, make sure that our push rods are still sitting on top of our lifters in there. And they appear to be working just fine. So check that we're back at top dead center, and we are not. Alright, so right there is top dead center. And now we can set our valves. So intake has to be 3 to 5 thousandths at 4. And our intake is actually the bottom one here. This is your exhaust, comes right up through the exhaust here. So gonna spin that down till it just has a little bit of drag on it. Maybe that's it. Then we're using T20 Torx, and I'm going to tighten that up and just recheck. So it has a little bit more than I like. Let's check on 3,000, see if we can get 3,000s in there. And that's still too tight, so loosen that up. All right, that feels good. Has a little bit of drag. Then we'll move on to our exhaust up here. And exhaust should be 5 to 7 thousandths. So that is way too much. So lighten it up a little bit. Probably right there is good. So without turning this wrench, we will lock this in, and I think that's good. So now we'll roll the engine over. And we'll bring it back up to top dead center. And just double check our gaps. Alright, and then just slightly snug these down. It's a thin pan, so you can really bend it pretty easy. We can hook up the pressure gauge and check what kind of pressure we increase to here. Alright, so to hook up our pressure gauge, we'll just thread it in the spark plug hole. Alright, if I remember correctly, which I probably don't, but I believe we struggled to hit about 45 pounds before we put a new head gasket in and cleaned up the valves. So let's turn it over and see what we're going to get here. We're at about 80 or so, and the tractor's been sitting for a while, so I have a feeling a lot of that could just be due to the rings not loosened up. So I think that should be good enough to continue assembling and see where we're at. All right, so our head gasket kit also comes with a new exhaust gasket. So put that in right away. Just like assembling all things with more than one bolt, always get them, all the bolts started threaded before you tighten any of them down. Just makes lining up the others easier. And this uses, what is it, 1/4 inch Allen. Also, you're just tightening into an aluminum head, so don't crank on it. It doesn't need it. Yep, that's good there. And then I'll put the spark plug back in. Normally, if it would be a good time to change out the plug, but this one looks like it was just put in. Instafire. Never heard of Instafire, but it's branded MGD too, so Miller fans should like that. Also, spark plugs don't need to be cranked in, so. Yeah, that's sufficient. Put our boot back on. And then we can move on to putting the intake back on. All right, so on the intake side here, just put these two screws back in. And that's good for that. Let's fire it up. Give it a little starter fluid, just help it out. Choke on. Not what we want. Alright, so we took apart the carburetor, blasted out all the insides, cleaned everything out. It was pretty gummed up, so it might have something to do with it. It seemed like it was firing before top dead center, and after pulling off that fan shroud, noticed that the old flywheel looks, I mean, this looks really clean compared to how it should look after this kind of age. And comparing it with another Intech engine, a parts engine, I noticed that the pickup for the ignition is a lot closer than the key here. So after swapping out this one, so the old key, ignition here, and the other key was probably about, I don't know, 20 degrees difference. So this thing was never going to run with this flywheel on it. And, that's the kind of stuff you run into when somebody else works on an engine and you have no idea the history on it. When we found out that the flywheel was wrong, that kind of opened up a big can of worms. So when we replaced the flywheel with the correct one off a donor engine, we also have to replace the fan because that's different. And new fan shroud. I think I got a washer floating around here somewhere. And the bolt. And this gets torqued to 100 foot-pounds. And we just happen to have a brand new air filter here, so we can slide that in. And our cover plate. Alright, so when I was crawling around underneath it, I noticed that a bunch of these brackets are bent up, and we do need to grease the spindles. We'll sharpen the blades, so we're going to drop the deck and I'll show you what we have to do that. We have a pin there which we have to pull, a pin there which we have to pull, and then on the front side there's that pin, and then on the other side there's the same two pins as here and here. Alright, I forgot to mention there's the cable for engaging the blades that has to be disconnected, and that should have had a cotter pin on it, and it didn't. And then this just hooks in over there, which I'll show you in a second here. Now the deck is free, minus the belt up here. Now the deck is free. You can just slide out. You can see some of the things wrong with it here, and if you look over here, you can see that this is all bent up and jammed, and so we'll have to take that apart and re-straighten it. And the other thing is that the deck is bouncing, and this wheel here should be pointing straight, and it's not. So we'll bend that back out. So overall it's in good shape. It's not rusted through or anything, so it's good to start with. So we're going to remove this bracket right here and re-bend that out. So that should be flat there, and that should be flat there. So we got all of our linkages bent back into shape. So now when the blades engage, both brakes let off. So we fixed that problem. Now we'll move on to flipping the deck over and taking the blades off to sharpen. So with an impact gun, it's a lot easier than trying to hold the spindle from moving and then wrenching on it to take it off. And these blades are in really good shape. They just need to be resharpened. So we'll clean them up and put an edge back on them. Alright, so we got the deck all cleaned up, painted the surface, gave it a 1-2, and sharpened the blades, checked all the spindles, everything's good like that. So we're ready to slide this back underneath and hook it up. way. Then to the other side. So we got the deck back on. It works with engaging the blades. Everything tightens up and spindles release there. We also got a set of front wheels on this bad boy, and the engine cover is all on. We're still getting a little bit of a stumble on full throttle, so we'll have to take that back apart and take a look at it again. Maybe mess with the governor a little bit. But we're still missing the obvious part, and that's the hood. But I did happen to find a hood online. There's only a slight problem, and let me show you. So that's how it fits down there, but it's the wrong size hood. So it fits good down here, but not so much right in this area here. So yeah, this is the wrong hood for this thing, and you know, it actually kind of fits the profile up here, and we already have the hood, so I think if we were to raise up the front end that much, I don't know what that is, 3 inches or so, 4 inches, we might actually be able to get it to kind of fit. So I don't know yet. We're gonna play around with that and see what we can come up with. Or to make this fit, I think we gotta make a new mount. What is that, roughly 4.5 inches up? And I think if we bend up some sheet metal to build like a shape, I don't know, we should be able to make something to kind of fill in this gap and mount the hood. Playing around with making the new bracket, this is what we came up with. The hood fits pretty decently up here, and down here you can see we have that the stock hardware mounted in there on top of this folded up metal bracket, which we'll then just paint black and mount to the frame with the existing holes. But our new mount that we made up, just folded up a couple of pieces of steel and then screwed it all together, painted it, and just using the existing brackets and existing mounting locations. That way if we ever do find the correct hood again, we can always just swap it back. But I think this will work out pretty decent for us. So this will just sit on top like that. The original mount here will go back in, and that'll mount the muffler and hold all that in place. So then we'll just bolt everything back together, stock hardware, and put the hood on. Our new support here is mounted up to the front here, and we have clearance for the engine and all the wiring there. Kind of looks factory, a little bit cleaner, but you know, we can just dirty up this and it'll match then. Yeah, seems to work. Alright, I think we have everything hooked up and should be good to go. Let's fire it up and take it for a spin and check how everything works. Alright, just like that, we turned a pile of parts into a running, cutting, driving machine. If you found any of this helpful or entertaining, thanks for watching, and like and subscribe.